Hey guys, welcome to CarCast. I am Matt, the moderator, DeAndrea, here with Bill Goldberg. How you doing, buddy? How's Texas?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. Texas is Texas. It's wonderful. It's like I said again, the best place to be quarantined for 2 or 3 months on over 100-acre property. That gives you a plethora of responsibilities to take care of every single day.
I
It's
know,
all
right? It's
good.
constant work. We're gonna have a good show today. We've got Russell Carr from he's the design director for Lotus in the UK. He's going to be joining us as well. We're going to talk about some new things about what's going on with Lotus and the new electric supercar that I saw at Monterey last year, the Evija, I believe. I want to make sure I'm saying that right. We'll find out from Russell. Before we get started, a reminder from our friends at Dodge. With Dodge Power Dollars, for every horsepower of your new Dodge vehicle purchase, you'll get $10 off. So peeling out in a 2019 Dodge Charger RT Scat Pack, hey, no problem. You just got $4,580 off. I think I saw some photo posted from our buddy Marcus Angel. The undercarriage of the lawman's getting it all kind of buttoned up. I'm sure he's been maybe sending you some photos and stuff as well.
It's a race, man. You know how it is. It's a race. It's a race between getting the space available for the lawman to be finished and it actually being finished. So
yeah, and then I know there were some ideas of like where to take it or where to debut it, but now that every event on the planet is on hold, I'm not exactly sure if that hurts or helps. Does it maybe ease the pressure on a timeline? But
it helps exponentially.
Yeah.
Obviously you don't. I mean, we were supposed to debut it in November. Marcus didn't want to. This isn't the restoration that needs to be rushed by any stretch of the imagination, like you need to rush any of them.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to take extra time with this one. So we pushed that date, and then looks like everything else has obviously been pushed. The longer we have to not have to make a decision as to where it's going to go and when it's going to go, the better.
Yeah. It's interesting because, as we've talked about on the shows the past few weeks, is how pretty much Monterey Car Week is completely canceled. Pebble Beach is canceled. The auctions are canceled. We know that the Quail event is canceled. Concorso Italiano is canceled. So it's all pretty much done. The only thing up in the air right now is still the races, the vintage races, the Rolex Historics. That event can sort of stand alone on its own and just do the racing event. Maybe, fewer spectators, more about the racing. But we'll still see if that happens. But also, I don't know what that does to a Woodward Dream Cruise, which apparently that's still on the schedule for August. I'm told Roadkill Nights is still on the schedule for August. And I'm told Hot Rod Power Tour has been moved to like August 20-something, 23rd, 20-something, because, it's whatever, it's a week long, which is, it falls on the same weekend of the Indy 500, which was rescheduled to August 23rd. But I'll tell you, all of these things are tentative. I just don't know that they're going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, when they make the decision, what's the landscape going to be like?
Right.
Are you going to be able to sit next to somebody at a race? Are you going to be able to sit next to somebody on an airplane, for God's sakes? Anymore. So it's a matter of time before we find out what the landscape's going to look like. Man, it's a weird deal. Everything's up in the air, and I mean, you're obviously going to be reinventing the wheel with the decisions you make, and hopefully nobody falls on the sword by making a bad decision. I'm very curious to see not only when they come back, but what the landscape's going to look like.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's definitely going to be interesting for sure. I had a chat with a friend the other day that is on the board of directors at a world famous Los Angeles hospital, we'll just say. And
you don't have to specify anymore.
And he was basically telling me, they're doing their thing every day. And as far as social distancing, is it working or not? And he's saying, yes, it is. And it's basically flattened the as far as like ER and people going in with cases, it's flattened out. It's not lower, it's not higher. They've sort of reached a number that they're seeing going in and treatments going out, and that's where it is. But as far as the future on like vaccines and stuff, he's like, these guys aren't even having that discussion yet, because a vaccine, which would have to be created for something like 7 billion people, is still in the distance, right? Like, even if you get something approved, it's likely that the US, because of our resources and money available in the private sector, would be able to get on it first, and multiple companies would have to do it because of the amount we would need. And I just don't see it happening before, January, February next year. But
you got to look at a realistic timeline of it.
Yeah.
I think that's by far the earliest that anything like that's going to happen.
Anyway, that all being said, I don't know what it's going to do to the events this year. We'd like to do some events. We're excited about doing some events. If some of the events did open up, like Rolex Historics, I think we would go. We'd put a little bit of trust in the organizers that they would do the research and take the precautions to make sure everybody was safe. And then we would do, our own stuff, of course, whatever, masks, gloves, cleaning and whatnot. And if it's, maybe there's no, handshake, meet and greets, maybe there's just, some social distancing at the track and kind of do it that way. It doesn't have to be, just long lines and crowds at the auctions in Pebble Beach, toasting cocktails and stuff. We could still go and do the track if they make it available. I think we'd be interested in exploring going. But I guess we'll see how it goes. I understand the hesitation of a lot of the big companies. Obviously we work with Dodge over here. They're a big sponsor of Roadkill Nights. They would love to do that event. But I get it. It's like, hey, man, the responsibility fiscally or, and socially for a company like that would be, do they want to invite a bunch of people at an event that's very sort of close quarters? And two, do they want to require their employees to work such an event? And it opens yourself up to potential lawsuits and something else. If a company tells me I got to go to work at an event like this, and then somebody gets sick or I get sick, you could potentially sue that company and go, hey, you forced me into this. I said I didn't want to do it, right? And no company wants to be in that situation, right? So even if somebody say, hey, we're going to do an event, will the money show up? Will the sponsors show up? Will the vendors show up? Like, that's the question. You can't just say we're going to do it or we're not going to do it. Even the SEMA show.
It gives people the opportunity to think outside of the box because they have to right now. Whoever comes up with that unbelievably cool formula of how to put these events on is gonna revolutionize the business.
Yeah,
all these businesses.
We're all gonna walk around like John Travolta, the boy in the plastic bubble from years ago.
I don't think it's gonna be that. I think
at an event,
I think this provides opportunities for people to think outside of the box because they have to. And somebody's going to come up with some very interesting ways to entertain people from now on. So,
I already saw one company has already developed like a robot, like a bomb squad robot that you can send in, but it was a robot that can go in and already detect like coronavirus, like, I don't know, in the air or on surfaces. So you don't even have to send somebody in to do it, to test it. This thing can go in and give some sort of initial test. I don't know. That's kind of smart, right? Like if you're
it's like standing in the security line to get into the Super Bowl. It's going to be like 7 hours long, and there's going to be one robot right there taking people's temperature or trying to.
It will be.
Virus or whatever it is.
All right, let's bring Russell in. Chris has got Russell queued up from Lotus, and we'll chat a little bit about what's going on with those guys over there. Give us a second. I see him connecting.
Just want to know when they're going to make a bigger car. That's all.
I'm driving the Lotus Amora GT right now. It is snug, my friend. It is snug.
Thank you.
For sure.
I wonder why I like American sports cars.
Yeah. There we go. Hello. Hey,
Yeah,
Russell. How you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm back to normal with British weather. It's raining outside, so we feel much more comfortable now. When it was sunny and we were wearing shorts, we felt very uncomfortable.
You're like, make it
Yeah.
stop.
We got something else to complain about now rather than just coronavirus. So.
Well, hopefully, everyone's being safe over there as well. We get some of the news about it over there, but we've got our own politics and whatnot going on over here, which is entertaining to say the
Yeah.
least.
That's one way of looking at it.
Yeah. So Russell, you are you're in the UK. You've been at Lotus for a long time. You're the head of design at Lotus. You've been around at Lotus since what? Since about 1990 or so.
Yeah, 1990 I joined, yeah, so just coming up to 30 years. So yeah, it's been an enjoyable time.
As a very young man, I had a Lotus Elan convertible, like the 91.
Yeah.
Yeah, 91.
Yeah.
Real fun car to drive. Not the best car in the world, but but with the little Isuzu engine, it was this. Bill, if you're not familiar with it, it's a little two-door convertible, front engine, front wheel drive.
I can picture you in it right now.
Yeah, it was red. It's a beautiful red. It was fun to drive. Yeah, Chris is bringing up some photos.
There you go.
I
want to see you and your mullet going down Hollywood Boulevard.
And I'm telling you, just a crazy amount of like torque steer, like front engine, front wheel drive, little turbo. And when you get on it, it just wants to dart over to the side, like just crazy torque steer on that thing.
Well, that should be absent because they did this clever thing, didn't they? Was it called the raft or something with the like a subframe at the front, which was supposed to take out some of the torque steer?
Yeah, I don't know that it really worked. Like if you took your hands off the wheel and just mashed it down, you'd be darting off into the lawn somewhere. I remember that, but it seemed like it just handled great. It was a fun car, and just to be like 15, 16 and really start to like cut your teeth like legally driving a manual transmission and stuff in a car like that was exciting.
Well, that's a pretty good place to start. I don't think many of us start on something as fun as that. Certainly not in the UK. Usually it's something more sober in the UK you start driving on. So
yeah, and it wasn't, I don't even know where it came from. My dad had it. It was used, and it just turned out to be one of these things where like he was doing a deal with somebody and helping out a guy, and there was some sort of trade involved and not a lot of money and blah blah blah. We ended up with this car, and it was interesting. It was fun, and so right now this week I'm driving the Lotus Evora GT, which
are you enjoying that?
Yeah, I am. It's definitely different than the Elan from back in the day. This thing has been a blast to drive so far. Just before you were joining in, probably something a little bit difficult for somebody like Bill Goldberg over here to fit into at I don't know 6'4", 6'3", 6'4", and I don't know 250.
Because Bill Popper, my CEO,
the 270 part's the part that's unmanageable.
Yeah, so it's meant for little guys, I would say for sure. But you've had the opportunity to work on a number of cars with at your tenure of Lotus, but also have seen sort of the ups and downs of the company as well. And before we get into the new cars, which I know is your favorite part, being the head of design, but first of all, I'm a fan of Lotus. I'm a fan of Lotus cars, of Lotus design, and Lotus engineering. And I always thought Lotus could even survive as an engineering consultant if they would design an engineering consultant if they wanted to, and not even build cars, because they have so much legacy there and such a talented group. But the company has seen investors sort of come and go and change hands in ownership a number of times. What's the current state of Lotus, and is this the best time for Lotus now?
I think it's, I mean, I think it is the best time. Certainly it's the best time of all the time I've been at Lotus. I joined when we were owned by GM, which should have been good, but then fairly shortly afterwards, GM moved out. And then we were owned by Proton, a Malaysian. In between we were owned by Romano Artioli, who owned Bugatti. And then we were owned by Proton. And now we're owned by Geely, the company that also owns Volvo. So we're very fortunate now. We've got a company that's able to invest in Lotus and also provides a lot of technical support as well. So, cars these days are very complex things, and there's certain technologies that you need to have a lot of investment and a lot of development work in, and we're able obviously to tap straight into that. For example, interior electronics and user interfaces and all those sorts of things that now being part of the Geely group, we've got access to all that. So it's a really exciting time to be at Lotus. We're seeing headcount increase. We're seeing lots of exciting products, and in the big wide world, I think everyone's excited to see us stable again and have a promise of new products on the way.
What's the current structure of Lotus? Is it all under one umbrella? Is there Lotus Cars? Is there a separate Lotus engineering group that works with other companies? Lotus Racing, or is there an engineering side of racing, or is that a separate company now that's not associated with you guys? How did it sort of,
it's basically one
where do the
Lotus.
pieces fall?
There's basically one Lotus, and within that there is a division that does consultancy work, that does engineering work, as we used to call it. And it's not just engineering, it's other things. It's not the biggest part of the company, but then there's the car company that designs, engineers, and builds cars. And at the moment, there is no specific race team side of things. There has been in recent years. In recent years, we've been back in Formula One, but we're not currently in Formula One. But we do have plans to go back into some form of motorsport in the not too distant future. So the only side at the moment that is racing Lotus is, other than the independents, some of our dealers race in various series around the world. But the only other side is the company called Classic Team Lotus, which is run by Clive Chapman, and they're based just across the road from us, but they are a separate company. And he looks after all the single-seaters, the monoposto, whatever you want to call them, cars, from the very first ones right up to, basically he looks after the ones up to about 1990 and 91, I think. And they compete in all these classic race series around the world. In fact, last year I was there to see them compete at Laguna Seca. So they race all over the world.
So the core business right now is the focus is on Lotus Cars. It's what you guys, what we currently have in the market, the Evora and the future car. There's and I want to talk about that a little bit more. I had the opportunity some number of years ago to grab the Lotus Evora S, I believe, when the supercharger just came out on that car. I went out to a track out here in Palm Springs, California, called Thermal, and we did did about a day and a half of driving in those cars to get a feel for the track, to get a little bit of instruction, and then on the second day they brought out a Lotus 10-cylinder F1 car, which they basically fired up and they said, get in, put your helmet on, good luck, and go do a couple laps in this car. And it's amazing because don't quote me on the exact horsepower, but it was ridiculous amounts. Like if in race trim it's, 700, they said, oh, we got it down to 645. You'll never notice the difference. but the longevity, the reliability of that engine by just detuning it, a few points, was exponential. Like, and they said, so we've detuned it a little bit, and then these guys, for some crazy reason, gave me an opportunity to just get in this car myself and haul ass around that track. I tell you, it was the most amazing thing I've ever driven. First of all, the 10-cylinder, I know the engines have changed over the years, sounds amazing. Having that thing behind you is amazing. And it's interesting because the Evora, they're like, hey, get out there on the track. You're with the instructor. You're getting into a turn. And you're like, hey, if you're hearing some tire squeal, you're losing traction. So you either need to let up on the steering or let up on the throttle, which we all know makes sense. They said, now that you've learned that, forget it. Because when you get in the F1 car, if you feel like you're losing traction, they said, hit the throttle more because the downforce on the car pushes it to the ground as it's going faster. So, and everything, and of course, starting it is complicated. There's a big like jack shaft on a giant, like drill basically, and they plug it into the back of the car. And it's like 3 guys got to do it. And they got to come out like a minivan if you stall it out in the middle of the track. And they're like, whatever you do, don't stall it. So everyone's like, what do you mean? And so everybody's super nervous about it. And you watch movies, you even watch like cartoons, and you see the lines of the street start to blur as you go really fast, like in a like the CGI effects in a Fast and Furious movie. And then you realize you get in a car like that, and there's a huge long straightaway, and you mash the throttle, and on the top of the steering wheel, it's just the lights that are coming up, the shift lights, and you're just zoom, 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 and you're just banging gears in that thing. You realize that's true. Like, it just gets blurry along your sides, and your helmet is lifting off of your head and starting to pull off your head. You realize your helmet's not the right size, and it makes your neck hurt afterward. Like, it's the most intense experience you've ever done in your life. You're like, holy shit, what's going on? And then the whole time you're like, don't stall it. And then, you get your 2 laps, you get out, you're still shaking, and the next guy gets in there, and everybody, then you see like a line of 10 people all just shaking who are in the car. The guy's like, ha, 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 ha. Just, the Lotus guys are just laughing at you, all going, see, it was fun, right? So a crazy experience, once in a lifetime experience. Was very fortunate to get invited to something like that. But the experience of getting in the Evora years ago and doing that, and then that car, and now I have this GT that was loaned to me to drive for a little bit, powers up on it a little bit, and it's a real fun car. Just you're right, Bill. It's a small car. It's a little snug getting in and out of it for sure. But this one that I have here is a proper manual transmission, and the one I put on the track was the paddle shift. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I noticed in this Evora GT is that little click noise when you're shifting that manual, almost like a steel gated shifter. And it's so satisfying to have that. That's got to be intentional on you guys' part. Just give it that little.
Yeah, no, that was done a few years ago. I guess about 3-4 years ago, they did some development on the gear shift mechanism, and on the Exige and Elise that we still sell in Europe. We actually expose the mechanism as well. So not only do you feel the difference, but you actually see the mechanism, the structure underneath, which I think is really cool. And
yeah.
People do as well. So yeah, that sort of amplifies that snick thing. So I think that's a really big step forward. The whole engineering development around that gear shift mechanism.
So when I return this car back to the Lotus guys and the shifter boot is ripped off and put in the passenger seat, I'll tell them it was your idea.
It's always designed for anyway, so that won't be any problem.
I want to talk about the next car that you guys are working on. Now, it seemed like it wasn't that long ago, just a number of years ago. Under previous ownership, and possibly a different CEO at the time, Lotus had big aspirations of coming out and they're like, we have 4 cars or 5 cars, and we're going to fill the lineup of ultra supercar down to sports car. And it just seemed like a lot of vehicles announced all at once. Very cool idea. Good attention to Lotus on saying what we're capable of doing. But maybe the resources weren't in place to make that happen. So now it looks like it's pared down a little bit. We have the Evora and the new all-electric car that you guys are working on, right?
Well, that's the start of the journey. Yeah, there is going to be a range of cars, but yeah, we're doing it differently to the way we did it last time. We're going in, we're not saying what we're doing in the future. We're not promising big. We're just starting off with one car, which is the Evija, and that's a real statement of intent about the company going forward. So, great place to start doing such an extreme vehicle. For us working into design, and you know, all the shackles come off. It's time for us, I think it's Disney, isn't it, to say, dream big. You know, we can flex all those creative muscles. And obviously doing a limited run of 130 cars, hand built, the latest technology, we can really push the boat out. And beyond that, there will be other cars. There'll obviously be more conventional, more affordable vehicles, and they won't go quite as far as that. But we've set out some of the principles, both in the way the car looks and some of the technologies. And I think for us also, it was a way of us, I don't know if you use the same phrase in the States, but getting match fit. You know, it's like a sportsman when they haven't been playing sport for a while. We've had relatively small projects in recent years to work on. And then suddenly we've got this amazing thing to design, you know, the most powerful EV sports car in the world. Basically, for us, no limits. Suddenly, yeah, you can get really match fit and push yourself, constantly pushing yourself. You do something and then think, well, I didn't think we'd be able to do that. We can go a bit further, etc. So it's been a fantastic project to be on. It's got everyone in the company re-enthused as well. You know, initially we're the first guys to go forward in the studio doing the initial design work, and one or two technical guys. But as time goes on, more engineers get on board. And then last summer, before we showed the car in London, we were able to show the car to the rest of the company, all the guys who work in the factory producing the Evora and the Exige and Elise that we sell in Europe as well. And, you know, that was the first time they'd seen the car. And it was not just the product, but it was a symbol of what was going to happen under the new ownership, you know, new things, new exciting things coming forward. So, yeah, everyone was able to get, you know, motivated, get excited by seeing this car.
Was the intention from the beginning with this to create a halo car for that reason, to create excitement for the brand, to create excitement internally amongst all the employees of Lotus? Was that the only option? Like, we need a halo car, and then we'll fill in between the lineup from there. But let's start with that, or was there other motivation behind this?
No, I think it probably was. I can't say for certain because we got just a very simple brief. I think it was back in about August, September 2017. We just got a message through our CEO that the owner of the company, the chairman, he wanted us to do an EV hypercar, and it was that kind of simple. And there wasn't any reasons given initially behind it, but you pretty soon understand the logic behind it. It is that idea that it's a halo product. The effects of it cascade down in terms of branding, the customer perception. You know, it reminds people what Lotus has been over the years. It's been pushing the boundaries. It's at the forefront of technology. It's you know, the leading sports car. One of the leading sports car manufacturers. You know, our cars are all about being for the drivers, the driving experience. And yeah, I mean, that's what a halo car's about. Or you can say, you know, it's a statement of intent. But yeah, it motivates the staff. It re-engages the public. It does so many things. Yeah, and we're obviously working on other products now. And we can use that car now as as a reference point. As I say, we can't go quite as extreme on other things, but it can certainly inspire us as we go forward.
Well, I got to chime in for a second. After your description of your job title since basically the 90s, I really have to say I'm sorry that you're not having any fun at what you're doing. Because what an enviable position to be in, to have the gloves taken off, as we say here in the States, and to be able to develop such a car with no ceiling. Absolutely,
yeah. I mean, I think I said when we were launching the car, we're pretty lucky because our day job is designing sports cars. And, you know, as a designer, to design a sports car once in your life is something very special. And we do that day in, day out. Because of some of the tough times Lotus has gone through, we haven't often been able to do all new sports cars, which is a shame. We very often have done things and we get clay models and we get part of the way there and then they get stopped. So to be given a complete new car from ground up is fantastic. And then to be told it's a hypercar, it's got to be the best of the best. I mean, there's huge responsibilities with that. There's going to be a lot of people who want to criticize whatever you do at the end, and you're very aware of that, and you're aware of the responsibility to the brand as well. But at the same time, as you say, yeah, gloves are off. I can go to anything in the toy box here and have a play. And obviously, initially, when you start something, you have some ideas and you're testing the water. You don't know you're doing it, but you start realizing that people are starting to eat it up. They really like this, and you push a bit further. And for us, it was kind of like that with the aerodynamic philosophy behind the car. So, as you're probably aware on the car, we've adopted this thing they use in motorsport: transparency, porosity, basically ducting the air through the car as well as over the top surfaces. And we thought it was cool because it gave us a reason for doing different shapes, sculpture on the car, draws your eye through the car, gives the car speed. We knew it should work technically as well. And initially there was a bit of hesitancy from some people because it's more complex to do. But we were very lucky that Lotus's main aerodynamicist was extremely supportive and thought it was a good idea to go with it and really helped us. And, you know, initially there was a little bit of hesitancy, but then some people went, hey, this is really cool. I think this is a good idea. And then you can obviously push a bit further. Hey, what about if we do this? And then the aerodynamics guys get involved and they go, we think this will, you know, give us more downforce or some better effect. What do you think? Does this look cool visually? And then usually we say, well, that's kind of cool, but maybe it looks a bit too, you know, science project. What about if we do this shape with it? And they go, hey, cool, that'll work. And then all of a sudden you're into this fantastic relationship with other people in the company as well. And you're on a journey together, and that's really, really exciting.
I want to take a look at the car. Maybe
someone to turn the project off and say, no, calm down. We're going to just put some stripes on a car, we've decided. But it never happened. And now we're running prototypes, and we're going to be subject to the crazy things going on in the world at the moment. We'll be producing cars at the end of the year. So it's all going strong.
Let's see it.
Chris, maybe you can find some pictures of the car.
Car is absolutely gorgeous. The rear end of that car is just to die.
It looks amazing, but the part I wanted to bring up as the designer of this, you and your team, when you're given instruction going, hey, we want an EV, it seems like maybe you get excited about that, although unconventional, because we think of hypercars still having some sort of gas-powered engine. But as a designer, you don't have limitations of trying to squish an engine into trying to stuff a big engine or whatever into there. And then with that engine comes with the radiators and cooling and things like that. So now you can really kind of form a shape that's just fantastic and gorgeous, but but then you have to kind of, I don't know, maybe reel it back a little bit because it still needs to look like a car.
Yeah, we started off, we said we had some sort of aspirations and guidelines when we designed the car, We said it had to look beautiful, and that sounds obvious. Well, of course, you think every car designer would say their cars had to look beautiful, but it's quite easy when you're doing something this extreme to get carried away and just go into complete sort of fantasy land with a product. And it's also important, I think, with a Lotus that historically, if you go right the way back to the Chapman era of cars, they were always about blending things that were technically advanced, but also very elegant visually. So when we were doing Evija, that was something we really wanted to get that sort of balance into the car. But of course, we're thinking, well, what makes it a Lotus? Well, it's got to be ingenious. It's got to be clever in some way. So obviously, the EV gave us opportunity to do that. It's got to be memorable. The sculpture that we're doing makes the thing memorable, and also the technology. And of course, it's still got to be recognizable as a Lotus. So we obviously think about certain forms that people will hopefully recognize in a subtle way a Lotus, but also thinking about the principles behind every Lotus product and how we can work with those, about weight efficiency, driving dynamics, and aerodynamic efficiency. How can we support those technical attributes with the way we design the surfaces of the car, but also express them in the surfaces of the car? So they're the sort of things we start off with. But so yeah, the EV thing definitely opened up some opportunities because, as you absolutely correctly said, the packaging of the motors and the battery allow for more flexibility in where you put the surfaces. And then the fact that it's not a 2,000 horsepower internal combustion engine car.
Yeah.
You don't have to have huge radiators all over the place. You have to have more radiators than you might think, but it's certainly not the same as an internal combustion engine. So
I had the opportunity to see this car or some version prototype or just a design model or something at I believe it was at the Monterey Car Week at the Coil event last year. And I will tell you, you get up on this car in person, it is stunning. It is absolutely gorgeous. And Bill, you're right. The rear of it, that rear 3/4 shot that we're seeing right now, the angle of that car is just fantastic. When you really see kind of how deep it goes into the back where the Lotus branding is, and the scoops on the sides, it's a stunning car. You guys are nailing it with this car for sure. I can't imagine what it's going to cost, and I know I can't afford it, and I know there's only going to be a limited edition of them, but I imagine
know I can't fit in
it. You probably can't fit in it, but it's going to be interesting to hear your thoughts on how is this setting a design direction for Lotus as well? Are we going to start to see these elements start to trickle down to some of the other cars, EV or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, there's some elements which will go forward into other products. I don't want to go into too many details for a couple of reasons. One is we obviously want to keep some things confidential for our future products, but also we also like to reserve the right to change our minds sometimes as well. But I think for me, one thing which is from the past, but is in this car that's really important, is the kind of very muscular haunches, the fender shapes over the wheels. And we're not the only people who do that, I know that. But if you look at what we've been doing recently on cars like the Evija and the Evija, and then if you look back in our history, the racing cars like the Type 40 and the Type 11, you can see that sort of philosophy. And for me, visually, what it does is you're able to make the cabin look as though it's hunkered down between the wheels, like a sports prototype of any era. And that's a good visual message because it makes the car look like it's got low center of gravity. It's going to be dynamic, which is what we're all about. It's what the cars are all about, the driving experience. but also, you know, it's just a very pleasing form, soft, fluid, sculptural shapes. You know, never really date at all. The challenge then is obviously to find other areas on the exterior of the car where you can innovate and bring new things to it. So, for example, on Evija, as you rightly say, when you look at the back of the car, you can see the exits from the three-quarter Venturis, which are these drag reduction and downforce enhancing aerodynamic features. And then we've got the lights ring the exit of those ducts, which I think is completely unique. I can't think of another car that does that. So that's something very new and unique on the car. When you look at the front, we've got these very sort of tall, slim headlights with these little wing forms in. We used a lot of aviation references when we were designing the car, and it's a bit like the wingtips on a modern airliner. And they're all laser technology inside there, so obviously we're right at the cutting edge of that. Of course, we have no mirrors on the car, traditional mirrors on the outside, so we've got these little cameras that deploy, very sort of James Bond style, a bit like our old pop-up headlights when you turn the car on, and then we've got screens inside for driving. So there's things that remind you that it's a Lotus, but then there are things, I wasn't expecting a Lotus to do that, and that's really important, and that's what Lotus used to be. It used to be always trying new things, and that's certainly on the exterior and of course on the interior what we try to do on this car, and it sets a tone for the future products.
Will you be able to keep all of those elements on a production version of the car, specifically the cameras instead of the side mirrors, or the government's going to come in at some point and start to mess up your design?
I think cameras are coming, aren't they? I think the US is one of the markets that's still holding out against it. You can, with a car like this, which is low volume, and you do, you know, show and display type sales on them, you can be okay with it. But in the rest of the world, as you know, Audi and people are now starting to put them in for certain markets.
Yeah.
So I think it is coming. And it's an interesting challenge for us all. You know, we had to go through the debate about where do you put the cameras, what's the most efficient, where do you put the screens? And we started off, we all thought it'd be super cool to have the screens on either side of the steering wheel so you felt like you were a Formula One driver. But then some people said, well, this is really irritating because you've got flickering images close to your peripheral vision.
Yeah. There's a behavioral shift as well. It's like, what are we normally doing? And we've learned to look left and right. So I don't know if the screens end up being where a mirror would be, like, but inside the car, sort of in the, you know, the A-pillars, you know, there just because of what we've been trained to do.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting one. You've got to question all those. Are they behavioural ones because it's the correct answer, or is it just something that you've learned over the years? And will another generation think, why did we ever do this? You just think
my answer is yes.
A real turning point, you know. And obviously we had the same debates about the EV powertrain as well. I, like you guys, you know, still love the look of an internal combustion engine, the sound of it. But we know EVs are coming. We can now watch various forms of motorsport where people are racing EV cars. Mm-hmm. They generate their own soundtrack. And there'll be a coming generation who'll judge both equally. It'll be just, they're exciting for different reasons, you know. And of course, the thrill of this car is the biggest thrill you can have in any kind of vehicle, really, is that sense of change of state, is acceleration, is change of direction. So you've got a car that accelerates phenomenally, you know, the sort of what you would normally term as in-gear times, and this isn't in gear, but they're phenomenal. The 0 to 60 is phenomenal, and of course you've got huge mechanical and aerodynamic grip on this car, so it'll change direction really quickly as well. So it's going to be a real roller coaster of a ride driving it. So perhaps your practice of driving the F1 car
And where's the powertrain going to be coming from? Is this something you guys are developing, or is this something that's coming from possibly from Geely and Polestar and Volvo? Some of the other.
This was developed unique for this car. So for the EV systems, we've been a technical partnership with Williams, who are the Formula One guys. They're obviously sourcing certain componentry from various other places, but then they assemble the battery packs, for example. We've got, I'm slightly out of my depth here. I'm a visual guy, not a technical guy, but we've got these really clever combined, I think, gearbox and e-motors, which are from a British-based company, very compact. One at each corner, so 500 horsepower at each corner, basically. So we can obviously do torque vectoring and things like that. So it's independent, really, of the Geely group. A lot of what's being done on this car, partly because it's the very first project we did, and we weren't as fully enmeshed as we are now. But
will there be
big technology for this car?
Is there a multi-gear transmission of any sort? Is it a direct drive, just one gear, or will there be sort of a 2-speed or 3-speed transmission?
Technically, I'll get out of my depth here, but the way I understand it, it's a single speed solution. But so you need to talk to the technical guys to really.
Yeah.
All I know is the on paper figures of the car are phenomenal performance.
Well, we're running out of time here, but I appreciate Russell. Thank you so much. The car seems fantastic. I think we're more excited now than ever before about Lotus and what Lotus is doing. I think you guys nailed it on the design. I think the car is gorgeous. I think the ability of having an electric drivetrain and no traditional gas engine. One of the things we see on this car, when you compare it to hypercars, there's no big crazy wings and stuff that are going on because you're able to push the air through the car and get the downforce and stuff. Yeah. And I'm telling you, it just makes it look gorgeous. What you guys have done is fantastic.
That's very much deliberate. Yeah, we wanted a car that was kind of in one way discreet. It's not quite the right word, but you could view it as just a beautiful car, and then you walk around and you start seeing this crazy sculpture. So yeah, we have obviously limited active aero as well. We've got a deploying wing, we've got DRS flaps, so that's very unusual. Normally these cars have a lot more active stuff on it, so it fits with our philosophies because that's weight efficient to do it that way. And I guess it ties back all the way back to the 70s when in Formula One, Lotus were the forefront of harnessing airflow under the car, reducing the amount of wing surface through using ground effect, etc. But yeah, and obviously in the interior as well is something a little bit different. This floating beam, carbon fiber beam, gives a very different experience when you sit inside the car, very light and yeah, very different feel to being in the car.
Well, you guys can check it out. We showed some of the images up here, but go to lotuscars.com, at least here in the U.S. That's where you're going to go, lotuscars.com. And you can check out all the huge gallery of images and stuff up there. Bill, anything else for Russell before we let him go?
No, Russell, we appreciate it very much. And like I said, my only input would be, first and foremost, thank you for bringing us old school gearheads back into the new vehicle, but just make them a tiny bit bigger. I was looking at the footwells in there, and oh my God, I have to cut one of my feet off to get in that car. But it looks to me like it takes a lot from the Ford GT also in the aspect that it's an aero car.
Yeah, it's a big.
Yeah, I mean we're all on that train. We just took a different approach in the way we approached the sculpture and integrating it in a way that was part of the overall form of the car. So yeah.
Well, it was an honor and a privilege, Russell. Appreciate it very much, and we're very excited to see the car come out. I didn't think I could get more excited, except for when you said that there's 500 horsepower at each corner. So
at each corner, right? I know, it's fantastic.
A completely different level.
Yeah. Russell, thank you so much. We're going to wrap some things up here, and hopefully we'll get to connect with you in person, possibly at the next Monterey Car Week in 21 or something along those lines. Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. before we wrap things up, I'll remind you guys about our friends at Dodge. Give your local Dodge dealer a call or send them an email. Ring them up online. We're your Dodge dealer, where they bring you performance, technology, and great deals. There's never been a better time right now because Dodge is offering Power Dollars. And with Power Dollars, you'll get $10 off for each horsepower of your new car. That's every 2019 Dodge Charger, every 2019 Challenger. You can pull away in a 2019 Dodge Charger RT Scat Pack with 485 horsepower and receive an almost $5,000 cash allowance. So if you get more power, you get more off. It's that simple. So hurry into your local Dodge dealer, give them a ring today, and take advantage of Dodge Power Dollars.
One more thing with Dodge, during this obviously strange time that we're in with the coronavirus, if you go to Dodge.com and post a video or a photo and a story with the hashtag our muscle behind us, you can really bring some credit to the frontline workers and anybody that you know on the front line right now, putting their lives in jeopardy for guys like us. So thank you to each and every one.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, man. I think we're all set. We're going to wrap it up next week. Later this week on CarCast, Adam and I are going to be talking to Jim Farley, COO of Ford. So we got the big dogs on that show too. This has been a good week of
No doubt. That was cool talking to
guests.
Russell. I could see talking to Russell over a nice cup of tea or a nice cool ale or something. Right?
Right
Sounds
on.
like a very interesting guy. I'd like to get he and Trussell together. You think those would be some good stories?
I think it would be great. I love that this guy's been around with the ups and downs of that company and stuck with it. And like you said, you can see he's been frustrated in the past with just management changes and financial changes of him saying, we've had so many cars that we've designed and made clay models and I never get to see. And now he's got sort of a clean sheet of paper with.
Can you imagine how disheartening that whole process would be to put your heart and soul into a new project and take it all the way to the clay model and have it just squished right in front of you and say, no, it's kind of like the Geico commercial, but no, we're going with this now, throw those 15,000 pamphlets away that said something else. So it sounds like he's having a lot of fun.
I know what you're talking about.
Sounds like a lot of guys and girls, I'm sure, gearheads are able to do some cool things on that project. So that's cool to hear.
Right on. All right, guys, thank you so much. And until next time, keep the air and the spare in the bag and the wheel.
Boom.